You know, a man's garage isn't just a place to park a truck. It's a sanctuary. It's the one place in the world where the coffee is always hot, the radio plays the good stuff, and the rest of the world's nonsense stops at the drywall. For me, that garage was my church, my therapist's office, and my escape pod all rolled into one. It was the only spot in the entire neighborhood where I didn't have to worry about the width of my lawn stripes or the exact shade of beige on my mailbox. But all it took was one woman to shatter that peace. Let's call her Brenda. Brenda wasn't just the HOA president. She was a force of nature, a woman who wielded a clipboard like a crusader's sword and viewed every unauthorized dandelion as a personal insult. And when I say she crossed a line, I don't mean she stepped on my grass. I mean she drove a 3,000-pound sedan right over the line, straight into my sanctuary, and decided to take a nap. I'll never forget the evening it happened. I came home from a 12-hour shift at the plant, bone-tired, the kind of tired where your boots feel like they're made of lead. I hit the remote, the garage door rumbled up, and instead of seeing my clean concrete floor and my trusty workbench, I saw the back end of a gold Lexus, parked in my spot. But the kicker? Brenda, the woman who once fined me $50 because my trash can was visible from the street for 12 minutes past pickup time, was in the driver's seat, mouth open, head back, snoring like a chainsaw. That was the moment something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap, it was quiet. The kind of quiet that happens right before a storm tears the roof off. And standing there in the driveway, looking at the queen of the HOA drooling on her steering wheel in my garage, I decided she was about to receive two surprises she would never, ever forget. But before we get to the trap, you have to understand the slow-burning nightmare that led up to this. I moved into Oakwood Terrace about 5 years ago, looking for quiet. And for a while, I had it. Then Brenda got elected. It wasn't a landslide victory. It was a coup by apathy. Nobody else wanted the job, so Brenda took the gavel, and suddenly, our little subdivision turned into a police state. Brenda patrolled. That's the only word for it. She didn't walk. She marched. Visor pulled low, polo shirt tucked in tight, eyes scanning for violations like a hawk hunting field mice. I'm a rule follower by nature. I keep my nose clean. But Brenda had a way of inventing rules that defied logic. The first time she targeted me, I was in the driveway washing my truck. She stopped at the end of the drive, scribbling furiously. "Excuse me," I asked, sponge in hand. "Is there a problem?" "Excessive water runoff," she said, not even looking up. "And your vehicle is technically commercial grade, which violates Section 4, Paragraph C regarding aesthetic harmony." "It's a pickup truck, Brenda," I said. "It's Texas. Everyone has a pickup truck." "It's the lift kit," she sniffed. "It's aggressive." From there, it was a war of attrition. I got letters about my porch light being too cool on the color spectrum. I got warnings because my dog, a 120-pound Rottweiler named Tank, barked at a squirrel. She claimed it violated the noise ordinance. Tank doesn't bark, he woofs. It's a deep, soulful sound. But Brenda didn't care. But her worst habit? Parking. Brenda treated the neighborhood like her personal driveway. If she was inspecting the Smith's lawn, she'd block my driveway. If she was measuring the Miller's hedge height, she'd pull halfway onto my grass. I asked her nicely to stop. I asked her firmly to stop. "It's just for a minute," she'd say, waving a dismissive hand. "I'm doing official business. We all have to make sacrifices for the greater good." The greater good apparently meant Brenda didn't have to walk an extra 20 feet. It escalated until that Tuesday. I pulled up to the house, hitting the button for the garage door, expecting the sacred silence of my workshop. As the door rose, revealing the gold Lexus, my brain actually stalled. It just refused to process the data. I parked my truck on the street and walked up the driveway, half expecting to see a camera crew. Maybe this was a prank show. Maybe I was on Suburban Nightmares. But no, it was just Brenda. She had pulled in, engine running, AC blasting, and passed out cold. The entitlement was breathtaking. She must have been on patrol, decided she needed a break, saw my open garage door. I'd left it open for 10 minutes while I ran to the store, and thought, perfect. A shaded VIP lounge. I stood by the driver's window. I could hear the soft purr of her engine echoing off my tools. She looked peaceful, in a maddening sort of way. The visor was crooked. A partially eaten granola bar sat on the dashboard. I raised my hand to knock on the glass, to wake her up and scream, "Get out!" But then I stopped. Why scream? Screaming is what she wanted. Screaming is engagement. Screaming acknowledges that this is a negotiation. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a trespass. And trespassers don't get a wake-up call. They get consequences. I stepped back out of the garage. I hit the keypad on the exterior wall. The motor whirred, the chain rattled, and the heavy insulated door began its slow descent. I watched the daylight shrink until it was just a sliver at the bottom, and then, thump. Darkness. Well, not total darkness. The Lexus headlights were still on, casting eerie shadows against my pegboard. I walked to the front door of my house, went inside, and locked the deadbolt on the interior door leading to the garage. Now, she was sealed in. I stood in my kitchen, smiling. But I wasn't done. The garage was secure, but the lesson hadn't been taught yet. I whistled, a sharp two-note blast. From the living room came the sound of thundering paws. Tank, my serious, no-nonsense Rottweiler, rounded the corner first. He looked like a tank, broad chest, massive head, eyes that missed nothing. Right behind him was Dozer. Dozer was also a Rottweiler, just as big, but whereas Tank was the bouncer, Dozer was the party animal. He had a tongue that didn't quite fit in his mouth and a tail that acted like a metronome set to happy. "Boys," I whispered, "we have a guest." Tank's ears went up. A low rumble started in his chest. Not a growl, just an engine revving up. Dozer did a little tippy-tap dance on the linoleum. I walked to the interior garage door. I unlocked it quietly. I cracked it open. "Go say hi," I whispered. Tank pushed the door open with his nose and stalked into the garage. Dozer bounded in after him, nails clicking on the concrete. I stepped in behind them and leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. The garage was dim, lit only by the Lexus headlights and the faint glow of the dashboard. Brenda was still out cold. Tank walked right up to the driver's side window. He stood on his hind legs, placing massive paws on the glass, and peered in. His head took up the entire window frame. It was like a scene from Jurassic Park, right before the T-Rex attacks. Dozer, not wanting to be left out, ran to the passenger side and started licking the glass, leaving long, slobbery streaks. I waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Then, Brenda stirred. She shifted, smacked her lips, and opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was Tank. The scream she let out wasn't human. It was the sound a tea kettle makes when it's being murdered. She jolted back so hard she slammed her head against the headrest, flailing her arms. She scrambled for the door handle, realized it was locked, scrambled for the other door, saw Dozer's massive tongue sliding down the window, and screamed again. She was trapped in a metal box, inside a concrete box, surrounded by what she clearly perceived as the hounds of hell. "Help!" she shrieked, her voice muffled by the glass. "Oh my God! Help!" I flicked on the overhead fluorescent lights. The garage flooded with harsh, buzzing white light. Brenda froze, blinking wildly. She saw me leaning against the workbench, calm as a cucumber. I waved. A little finger wiggle. She rolled down the window about an inch. Jack! Jack, get them away. They're going to kill me." "They aren't going to kill you, Brenda," I said, my voice echoing off the concrete. "Tank just wants to check your ID. Dozer wants to know if you have any cheese." "Let me out," she yelled. "Open the door." "I will," I said. "In a minute. But first, we need to appreciate the situation. You are parked in my garage. You were asleep in my garage. Do you know what the HOA handbook says about unauthorized entry into private residences? Section 8. "I don't care about the handbook," she screamed. "Oh, now you don't care." I laughed. Funny how that works. But then, something shifted. Brenda's panic turned into something else. She started gasping. At first, I thought she was hyperventilating from fear. But then came the sneeze. It was violent. A full-body convulsion that slammed her forehead into the steering wheel. Chew. Then another. Chew. Her eyes started streaming water instantly. She rubbed them furiously, which only made it worse. Are there dogs in here?" she wheezed between sneezes. "Yes, Brenda," I said. "The 2 giant Rottweilers licking your car? Those are dogs. I'm sneeze, allergic, sneeze deathly. Sneeze, allergic." This was the second surprise. I knew she wasn't a dog person, but I had no idea her immune system regarded dander as nuclear fallout. She was swelling up like a balloon. Her face was turning splotchy red. "Please," she begged, tears running down her face, mixing with snot. "Open the door. Now look, I'm not a monster. I wanted to teach her a lesson, not send her to the ER in anaphylactic shock. The punishment had fit the crime. All right, I said. Back up, boys. I snapped my fingers. Tank dropped to all fours and trotted to my side. Dozer gave the window one last lick and followed. I hit the wall button. The garage door began to rumble open, revealing the sweet, pollen-filled freedom of the outdoors. Brenda didn't wait. She threw the car into reverse. She clipped my trash can on the way out, knocking it over, backed halfway into the neighbor's hydrangeas, slammed it into drive, and peeled out. I watched her go, sneezing violently all the way down the block. I stood there with the dogs, feeling a sense of profound satisfaction. Good work, gentlemen, I told them. Dozer burped. I thought that would be the end of it. I expected a war. I expected fines. I expected a lawsuit. But for 3 days? Silence. The neighborhood was eerie. No Brenda on patrol. No citations on mailboxes. It was like the witch had melted. On the 4th day, there was a knock at my door. I checked the peephole. It was Brenda. She wasn't wearing her visor. She looked smaller. Her eyes were still a little puffy. I opened the door, bracing for a fight. Jack, she said. Her voice was quiet. Can I talk to you? If you're here to find me for the trash can you hit? I said. Save it. No, she said. She looked down at her shoes. I wanted to apologize. I blinked. Come again. I shouldn't have parked in your garage, she said. I was tired. I was stressed. It was inexcusable. And I realized something. I've been awful. To everyone. This was not the script. Brenda didn't apologize. Brenda litigated. I'm listening, I said. I'm resigning, she said. From the board. Effective immediately. And I drafted a new rule before I stepped down. No HOA member is allowed to enter a resident's private property, driveway, or garage without written consent. It passed this morning. I leaned against the doorframe. Well, that's good, Brenda. There's something else, she said, dropping her voice to a whisper. She looked over her shoulder, scanning the street. The reason I was so tired that day, the reason I was sleeping in your garage, I wasn't just patrolling. I was hiding. Hiding? I asked. From who? There's a man, she said, her voice trembling. I've seen him at night. He wears a reflective vest, carries a clipboard. But he's not with the HOA. I thought he was with the utility company at first. But I saw him looking in windows. I saw him checking locks. When I tried to confront him last week, he laughed at me. He told me that if I knew what was good for me, I'd keep my mouth shut. A chill went down my spine. Why hide in my garage? Because, she looked at me with genuine fear. You're the only one in the neighborhood he seems to avoid. He walks past your house fast. He's scared of the dogs. Suddenly, the prank didn't feel funny anymore. Brenda, come inside. Tell me everything. We sat at my kitchen table. Tank laid his head on her lap, and surprisingly, she didn't sneeze. She was too terrified to have allergies right now. She told me about the stranger. About emails she'd found on the HOA server. Emails that weren't from her, authorizing transfers of reserve funds to shell companies. She thought she was going crazy. She thought someone was setting her up. I thought if I was tough on everyone, if I enforced every rule, I could prove I was in control, she admitted. But I'm not. Someone is stealing the neighborhood, Jack. And they're using the HOA as a cover. We need to find this guy, I said. And we need to find out who on the board is helping him. It's Greg, she whispered. Greg was the vice president. The guy with the perfect hair and the fake tan who always agreed with everyone, but never did any work. He's the only one with the passwords to the bank accounts besides me. That night, we set a trap. Not a garage trap. A real one. Brenda sent an email to the board saying she had evidence of embezzlement and was keeping it in the old maintenance shed at the edge of the subdivision. She said she was going there at midnight to organize it. I waited in the bushes near the shed. Tank and Dozer were with me, silent and ready. The air was thick with humidity and tension. At 11:55 p.m., a figure approached. It wasn't Greg. It was the man in the reflective vest. He moved like a pro, quiet, efficient. He pried the lock off the shed door. Then, a second figure emerged from the shadows. It was Greg. Is it here? Greg hissed. She said it was, the man replied. We burn it. Then we burn her reputation. We frame her for the missing funds. That was enough for me. I stepped out of the bushes, racking the slide on my shotgun, just for the sound effect. Tank let out a growl that sounded like tectonic plates shifting. Evening, gentlemen, I said. Greg spun around, his face draining of color. The pro reached for his waistband. Don't, I warned. My dogs can cover 20 feet faster than you can draw whatever you have. And they haven't eaten dinner. They had, in fact, eaten a very large dinner, but Greg didn't know that. The police arrived 10 minutes later. Brenda had called them the second I made my move. Turns out, the pro was a guy named Miller, a known fraudster who specialized in draining HOA reserve funds. Greg was his inside man. They had siphoned off nearly $100,000 in maintenance fees over the last year. As the cops shoved Greg into the back of a cruiser, he looked at Brenda. You were supposed to be the patsy, he yelled. Everyone hated you. It was perfect. Brenda looked at him, standing tall for the first time in weeks. Yeah, well, she said. I learned a lesson recently. Don't park where you don't belong. The neighborhood is different now. Brenda actually stayed on the board, but she's different. She got rid of the visor. She stopped measuring grass with a ruler. She started walking her own dog, a hypoallergenic poodle, and waving at people. We have a new rule in Oakwood Terrace. It's unwritten, but everyone knows it. You look out for your neighbors. You respect the boundaries. And you never, ever mess with the guy who has the Rottweilers. I was in the garage yesterday, working on a carburetor, when Brenda walked by. She stopped at the end of the driveway, respectfully distant. Hey, Jack, she called out. I brought some treats for the boys. She tossed a bag of jerky toward the porch. Tank caught it in midair. Thanks, Brenda, I said. How's the allergies? Getting better, she smiled. I'm taking shots, just in case I ever get trapped again. We both laughed. It was a good sound. The sound of a neighborhood that had healed. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. Greg and Miller were part of a larger ring. The police told us they operate in 3 states. They look for HOAs where the neighbors are divided, where everyone hates the president, where nobody talks to each other. That's their hunting ground. So, I have to ask you, who's running your HOA? Are your neighbors talking, or are you all hiding behind your blinds? Because if you're fighting with each other over trash cans and paint colors, you might want to check the reserve fund. You might want to see who's walking around your streets at night. Conflict makes you blind. And while you're staring at the lady measuring your grass, someone else might be walking out the back door with your wallet. Let me know in the comments. What's the craziest thing your HOA has ever done? And do you actually know where your dues go? Drop a story below. And if you enjoyed watching a couple of Rottweilers save the suburbs, hit that like button. It helps the channel, and frankly, Tank loves the attention. I'm Jack. This is my garage, and the door is open for friends. Thanks for watching.